Many people regard you as a personification of Ubuntu. What do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects. Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, you have done something very important which will be appreciated.
The open source report on the 22nd of August 2019 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. As we normally do for the open source report, we partner with Cranston Software, and this is MA here. We'll start with the latest kernel, the stable one that is 5.2.9. The long term is 5.1.2.1. And I believe I have on this particular box, I'd have to look and see, but basically 5.1 point somewhere in that realm was released on the 7th. I'm using an Ubuntu on this particular box. We'd have to look and see, and let's see, set a blind person to the B. We'd have a brief look here and see. Not going to take a look here and see. Anyway, we'll skip that part with the kernel, but we always start out with the Linux kernel here, and remember to update your kernel. You need really to do that. What's the long term is, well, let's see what the long term is here. Is 4.19.67 if you want to go with the long term. You can also patch your kernel, incidentally, and that is one of the ways of doing it. The mainline kernel, I think we talked about that, is 5.3, and that is the RC release of 5. So I gave you the stable one. You're okay with either one. You can just patch it or use the tarball, which many people use. Anyway, let's get to Android. We'll talk a little about Android and what Android is planning to do here with automobiles. They are always doing something here. They are here. And this is from the Android Authority here. Nice picture of it. We'll put it up. This is for automobiles. Android Auto launched, of course, 5 years ago, and has been driving force behind brand new cars purchased ever since. And infotainment systems are important to people when choosing a new vehicle. This is why Google is giving another auto a huge overhaul in an attempt to make it the best in the class. With the new update, Android Auto will show you preferred navigation app as soon as you start your car. So you no longer need to start from the home screen. It will give you suggested navigation locations based upon your history. This is very important. A lot of big data involved here. If you need to go somewhere new, you can use Google phrase and ask for new directions. Nice picture of it here. And A new navigation bar will dramatically display media to accent to what you're currently doing. If you are navigating, nav bar will show your media and phone controls. If you've got the podcast launcher open from a large view of the nav bar, will show basic turns and directions. The new nav bar will help you navigate safe and more efficiently. So some of the new apps they've got on here, the new version of Google Auto, their new app launcher to easily switch between compatible apps. You can access things like maps, podcasts, calendars, news from the heads-up display. That's HUD. The menu will be organized based on the apps used most frequently. Multitasking is a lot easier and a lot safer in the new Google Auto. Some apps will have a small Google Assistant badge embedded in their icon. When you tap the badge, the assistant will give you more details relating to the app, like helping you understand your calendar, making phone calls, or sending a text message. Again, the Hey Google is in there. The new Android Auto also includes a notification bar that allows you to manage notifications at your own pace. The bar will show recent calls, texts, alerts, etc. In other words, it is all automated with your phone. Very interesting situation here. They did not autos that have that. You'd have to check that with preferred auto dealer and see where that particular situation is. Let me just go to the Android police here. These are Google Hangouts, and this is kind of interesting. This is more for people that are Google Hangouts shut down, delayed for G Suite users. That is people that get the Google Suite, institutions or what have you. Jules Wang wrote this on the 21st of August. Google is delaying the shutdown of its long-time Internet protocol chat and call app Hangouts. The G Suite users were originally told that their Hangouts would be retired starting in October. Now the deadline has been pushed back to no sooner than June of 2020. So in other words, next summer. The company says it's taken feedback from G Suite customers into considering that they need more time to move from classic Hangouts to the newer app Hangouts Chat and Hangouts Meet. In the updated timeline, Google says G Suite users will be able to voluntarily switch from classic Hangouts to Hangout Chat in the first half of 2020. Systematic retirement would begin soon after that. Regular customers expect to begin a transition to Chat and Meet sometime after the process for G Suite's customers, and now the company is saying no changes will be made to the consumer version of classic Hangouts. That support will continue. When we contacted Google for clarification of what it ultimately meant for the consumer version shutdown, the company responded with the following statement: to clarify, we will continue to support the consumer's use of classic Hangouts in the interim. We still expect to transition customers to free Chat and Meet following the transition of the G Suite people. Well, we throw this in. For the moment, classic Hangouts will receive ongoing maintenance, and classic and Hangout chats will feature new read receipt there. And then let's see. There's some of the things that are going on with Google here. So let's switch from Google and Android and go to the Linux Journal. Very interesting here what has happened to the Linux Journal. It is no more. The Linux Journal. Time to say goodbye is a caption here. The Linux Journal ceases to publication and on an awful goodbye. Important note from the Linux Journal LLC on the November the 7th, so we'll pass that. Linux Journal shut down its door for good. All staff were laid off, and the company is left with no operating funds to continue in any capacity. The website will continue to stay up for the next few weeks, hopefully longer for an archival purposes if we can make it happen. The Linux Journal, the editor there, Kyle Rankin. Anyway, well, the last article here, I guess, is by Mitch Fraser, the Bosch trap command, and we'll just go in a little bit of it. If you've written any amount of Bosch code, you're likely to come across the trap command. Trap allows you to catch signals, execute code when they occur. Signals are asynchronous. Notifications are sent to your script when certain events occur. Most of these notifications are events you hope never happen, such as invalid memory access, bad system call. However, there are two events that I might reasonably want to deal with. They are also user events available that are never generated by the system that you can generate to signal your script. Bosch also provides a pseudo signal called exit, which is executed when your script exits. Well, the nine's there anyway. Reality 2.0 episode so-and-so there, and we thought we would put this in. Some of the last, that was, I suppose, the last article from the Linux Journal. I guess you'd say these kinds of things come and these kinds of things go, and now it is gone from the scene. So let us run along here. Usually on the Open Source Report, we try to come with what is the latest here. And let's go to what happened in Texas. We tend to talk quite a bit about security. Let me just one other thing here. This is from ARS Tech. Google Auto, back to it. The biggest upgrade ever is rolling out. It has a darker design, multitasking. Amito is the person here. Dark, I kind of like it here. I'm looking at it from more than one, and I think basically this just shows you the various consoles, but you can find us on there, Spotify. You can find iHeart if you use the application. It is hooked to your internet access, the telephone, the calendar, beyond the pawn. I'm not sure what that is. And Exodus is icons of Google Assistant. Badges aren't already apps, so they will verbally read you instructions, etc. And nice graphic early this year, Google I/O. Google announced a big upgrade to Google Auto. It's a smartphone-powered car interface, and the competitor is something called Apple Car. Now, around 3 months later, the interface is finally rolling out to the general public via app update. This version of Google Auto represents a major upgrade to the interface that was launched in 2014. The biggest change to the new version is the way the button bar works, and we went through that. The older version used a button bar like the Mac OS, and not very good. Never liked Mac OS. Icons for home, the useless car screen. Anyway, on a smartphone, Android will spawn controllable ongoing notifications for things like, and we went through what they will do. The darker screen color scheme on there, and over Google Auto News, Google is announcing that a standalone mode for Google Auto Smart App going away. The version above has the phone plugged into specifically compatible cards, and the phone beams an interface to the car display. So in other words, in states that you cannot use a mobile phone in your hand, this is in your car, so you talk, text, whatever else there, And Google is killing the smartphone-only version. So we go now to, let's see, some security news here. And this was in the news. This is ARS, Arms Technica. While one Texas county shook off ransomware, small cities take the full punch. This is Lubbock County managed to isolate the attack quickly, and others not so much. 21st, Sean Gallagher writing here. Few details have emerged about a coordinated ransomware attack that struck 22 local governments in Texas last week, but 5 local governments affected by the attack have been identified. On August the 20th, the Texas Department of Information Resources revised its initial report that 23 entries had been affected by by the ransomware attack, reducing the count by 1. And Texas DIR spokesman said in a statement that a quarter of the local governments affected had been able to at least partially restore operations. And including Lubbock County, which apparently escaped major disruption. That's according to a county judge named Chris Parris. He told 106 Radio that the county's IT department was right on top of it to get the virus isolated and contain it and deal with it in a very quick manner. Other local governments were not as lucky. Boulder, Texas, who has a population of 13,000, was the first to go public. Boulder City officials announced on Facebook a ransomware attack had affected normal city business and financial operations and services. A contingency plan had been put in place to provide basic and emergency services, animal control. And this is what happens when cities go dark. Water, wastewater, solid waste collection, but there was no estimate on how long it would take for full service to be restored. Another city, Kaufman, Texas, announced on Facebook that Kaufman had been affected by ransomware. Their computer and technical services had been severely affected by an outside source, the spokesman said. That was on the 19th of August. At this time, our computers and phones are down. Our ability to access data, process payments is generally very limited. The LA Times reported that Keene, Texas, a small incorporated city of 6,500, 40 miles south of Fort Worth, was also hit by ransomware. Keene's police and utilities were not affected. The city payment system for water bills was taken down. To the light, probably citizenry there. Wilmer, a community of 3,600 in Dallas County, according to CBS Dallas-Fort Worth affiliate. The systems at Wilmer's police department, water department, and public library were affected. City workers reported that they turned on their computers. They were greeted with a blue carrying the message, "All your files are encrypted." Ransomware, of course, is used to attack computers. They had a lot of that going on in June and July. Small cities are favorite targets of ransomware operators because they are likely to pay. That is from Chris Hinckley, a senior security researcher with Threat Resistant Unit at cloud provider Armon. The enormous impact of city operations like 911, police, courts, fire, non-emergency services, etc., create a huge sense of urgency and anxiety. No doubt about it, explains with high levels of urgency, potential mission critical, valuable data being held hostage, the threat actors are more likely to pay. Hinckley said it's not surprising that Texas had been hit hard by ransomware. Aside from the 22 attack last week, coordinated a campaign. There's several other Texas municipalities that have been victims in 2019. Texas has 1,216 incorporated cities, of which 25 have more than 100,000 residents, something we got to see there. We'll go on to Mr. Krebs on security. He's always around. Password reset check. This is by Brian Krebs. Almost a week ago, I heard from an indignant reader who suspects a data breach at a website They had just asked the reader to reset their password. From investigation, almost invariably revealed that the password reset demand was not a result of a breach, but rather the site's efforts to identify customers who are reusing passwords from other sites that have been hacked. But ironically, many companies taking these proactive steps soon discover that their explanation as to why they are doing it gets misinterpreted as more evidence of lax security. Over the weekend, a follower on Twitter, including me, in a tweet sent to California-based Glassdoor. Glassdoor, and this is Dear Glassdoor user, takes the security of its users' information very seriously as a part of ongoing effort. Glassdoor compares passwords associated with our members' database with lists of passwords leaked on other sites. Glassdoor was not involved in these incidents. We are requiring you to reset your password there. Anyway, the Twitter follower expressed concern about the message because it suggests to him that in order for Glassdoor have done what it prescribed, the company has had to be sorting its users' passwords in plain text. I replied that this was in fact not an indication of storing passwords in plain text, and that companies are now testing their users' credentials against a list of hacked credentials that have been leaked and made available online. The reality is Facebook, Netflix, number of big companies are regularly combing through huge data leak troves for credentials that have matched their customers, and then forcing a password reset. Some are checking for passwords reused on all new accounts. The idea is trying to stymie mass pervasive problems facing all companies that do business today, namely credentials stuffing attacks, in which attackers take millions or even billions of email addresses and correspondingly crack passwords from compromised databases, big data there, and see how many of them work on other properties. So how does this defense against the drudge of credential stuffing work? A company employs this strategy will first extract from the leaked credential list any email address that corresponds to a current user database, and from then the corresponding cracked plain text passwords are fed into some process that the company relies upon when users log in. That is, the company feels that their plain text passwords through its own password hatching or scrambling. A routine password hatching is designed to be a one-way function which scrambles a plain text password that goes back very, very long time in the internet business. And so some of the most common methods are MD5 and SHA-1, for example, can be far less secure than others depending on how they are implemented. Back to the process: if a user, the plain text password is hacked and matches others, is run through the internal hatch scenario there. So basically, this article concludes the talk about using two-factor security. I'll run through it here. No password hatching method can be made more secure by amending the password, what is known as assault, or random data added to input a hash function to guarantee a unique output. Many readers of the tweet on Glassdoor approached reason that the company couldn't have been doing what it described without also foregoing an additional layer of security. The tweet explains why. My tweeted explanation reply as to why Glassdoor was doing it. Glassdoor's Chief Technology Officer, Anthony Massaint, chimed in on Twitter thread to explain that salt is in fact added as a part of the password test. In our user database, we have three columns: user's name, salt value, and scrypt hash. Mosank explained in an interview with Krebs on security. We apply salt that's stored in the database hash function to the plain text password, and the resulting value has been checked against the hash database we store. Okay, I can't stress enough, do not reuse passwords. And don't recycle them either. Recycling involves rather lame attempts to make a reused password unique by simply adding a digit or changing a capitalization of certain characters. Crooks specialize in password attacks are wise to this approach. You, the user, can be expected to control what password hash method a given site uses. Indeed, they use them all. So this is something to know here if you have trouble remembering complex passwords, and this describes most people consider relying instead on password length, which is a far more important determinant of whether a given password can be cracked by available tools in any time frame that might reasonably be used. In vain, it is safer and wiser to focus on packing phrases instead of passwords. Phrases are collections of multiple, ideally unrelated words. Phrases are not only generally more secure, they also add benefit, easy to use. So Microsoft gets in it also. None of the above advice about password complexity amounts to a hill of beans, the attacker's standpoint. And they go into what's called NFA, that is multiple authentication factors, offered by a site you frequent is the best way to deter attackers. Twofactor.org has a list of your options here. Breakdown the industry. Password doesn't matter, but MFA does. Vinerd writes that, that's the Microsoft guy, based on our studies, your account is more than 99.9% less likely to be compromised if you use multi-factor authentication. Password managers can be useful for those who feel encumbered, and Glassdoor doesn't use multi-factor. Multi-factor is normally a password and 4 or 5 numbers that include many people, moms, dads, grandparents, etc. So that is where multi-factor stands. We encourage people to use difficult passwords if they have them and are usable to them. I thought we'd say a little bit about election security. I ran into one of the Cubers on a train last night. Anyway, we're shoring up the foundation of security. This is election security here, and that's a 50-state capacity. We thought we'd say data-driven campaigns, computerized election infrastructure raise serious questions concerning election privacy and security. As more politically active touch the digital realm, there exists a real potential for issues to influence a voting, compromise election activity, alter core democratic norms. So this is something that they do, and we conduct research, no doubt about that, get involved here. That is always one of the things to remember out there. For example, the state of Georgia is buying new voting machines for 2020, and for 2019 they are using the same voting machines. But if there's a breakdown, they could go to paper ballots. That would be the same option there. This is a result of a lawsuit that caused that particular situation. Let me just this is an older Washington Post article. Hackers were told to break into U.S. voting machines. They didn't. They didn't have much trouble. Oops, sorry about that one. This is by Taylor Telford. This is in Las Vegas. Ron Wyden, he's a senator from Oregon. The voting village that was on site. This is August the 12th. It's been around for a while. World Hackers Conference. This is DEFCON. A room full of hackers applied their skills to voting equipment there. And please break things, armed with lockpick kit to crack into locked hardware, Ethernet cables, inquiring minds. They were rare chance. Interrogate the machines that conduct the U.S. democracy. Wyden, along with the founder of Nordic Innovation Labs, Innovation Labs, was the organizer. Explained that almost all voting machines in the room were still in use in elections, despite having been known vulnerabilities. Many have internet connections. A weakness that savvy attackers can abuse in many ways. We need paper ballots, guys. That's what Senator Wyden said. Wyden walked away. A few hackers exchanged confused expressions. In the 3 years since the inception of DETCOM's voting village, and the conference at large has been a destination not only for hackers, but also for lawmakers, members of the intelligence community, etc. This year's programming involved hacking voting machines, as well as a panel with election officials, a demonstration of a $10 million experimental voting system from the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Project as part of a high-speed dating group therapy session where state and local officials gather there. So this is some of the things that happened. A call for paper ballots was a common refrain at the time of midterm elections in Delaware, Georgia, Louisiana, New Jersey, and South Carolina that have no auditable paper trail. Many places do, in fact, have those. And last month, the Senate's Intelligence Committee released a report detailing how Russian hackers probably targeted all 50 states. That's between 2004 and 2017. All the report didn't find any evidence the Russian hackers tampered with any vote tallies, and probably not. Usually the tampering with vote tallies is done by domestic hackers representing various operators. Joe Miller, an elections auditor in Linn County, Iowa, said he had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to Help America Vote Act complaint to try to get answers about security concerns. In other words, the federal government did not extend this information to the states. A spokesman for the Iowa Secretary of State defended the security of their system. Platt, Chief of Staff, also attended that. He's Iowa is secure, and we work every day to ensure it remains secure. Cybersecurity threats are constantly evolving, and we are constantly evaluating what's in place and what gains we can make. So, in other words, very interesting there. The voting village nested in a ballroom, sprawling Planet Hollywood Convention Center that was in Las Vegas, and they had first person shooting Doom there and various other things. And ahead of the 2016 election, hackers installed malware on VR's system network. Now, sailing through a stream of another made by VR systems. And I think somewhere they devised one of the many systems that used to be Devote, but Devote changed their name. I don't know if they're VR or not at the present time. I don't remember if they were VR or not mentioned here. But nonetheless, their eyes out for 2020's election and any interim election. In fact, in South Carolina, the old way was done of just basically stuffing the ballot box. And some officials had to redo a congressional election, which will be, I believe, in September. Some people are going to jail in that particular situation there. So very important things there. Your passwords, knowing that they're secure. Use a password manager. There's some open source password managers available. There's also the password phrasing. Mary had a little lamb coupled with, who knows, the rising sun or something like that. Anyway, that would be a very long phrase, but it's a phrase you supposedly could remember. But two-factor, if you can get it, is much better. Facebook, they are using a photo or something of that nature, and they have, of course, your password there. So that's their attempt at two-factor, changing passwords, not reusing passwords to simplify things. But basically speaking, unless you're in an organization, and some people frown upon this, you're usually not hacked, or you're not hacked in a way that make others vulnerable. Now, because these major sites, if they find a vulnerability, they will be on it like letters on a sheet of paper. But and that is usually where the ransomware people get in, because people at their workplace do texting, they email people, they respond to people, etc., on the company system or on a smartphone that is issued by the corporation, entity, or enterprise, or whatever it may be. So this is where that is very important. But most of the time it's just through sloppy, as in Equifax, they use the term password. PASSWD was literally the login, and that is or something like admin, and that is a set password for many routers, etc., and is not changed at all. So that's just sloppy work. Our systems that are not regularly updated, particularly the systems that come from the Microsoft enterprise, they are known to be dodgy. So you need to be very vigilant on those systems if you're using them. And of course, Linux systems, you can upgrade those. Slackware has an excellent upgrading path. Ubuntu has one, more or less, I've discovered, and so do many of the others, by literally keeping the kernel more or less updated. But it tends to be much more important is the libraries. The libraries need to be upgraded also, and that is something sometimes is neglected. There's an old thing in the Linux world: if it runs, don't touch it. And sometimes systems are not touched for years because they run continuously. They don't go down unless there's a power outage. Occasionally a kernel will panic, but not a regular situation, usually, like say for mail servers, those kinds of things that are out there. And nonetheless, this will end our report, short this time around, but this is MA at Cranston Software on a nice summer day as we enter into September and down to fewer and fewer baseball games, a national pastime, and it'll be an interesting race. We've had a lot of home runs hit this year by many players. So what will happen? The injury list, etc. We'll end with on the official song of the Chicago Cubs, "Go Cubs Go," and I won't sing it all. I don't have all the lyrics. Or Harry Carey's "Take Me Out to the Ballpark," incidentally on WBRN Radio and the Boston Red Network. We have on the political channel Boston Red. You can find that on iHeart, on Stitcher, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Spreaker, and around the horn, as they say. You can find all of our programs on the Numbers Man side. That is our macroeconomics program. Those are usually done weekly. You can find those also there as the open source report you also find. And All About Sports doesn't come as regular as one would hope. And BR on the World, that's our international channel, needs to some attention to it. But as one will say, incidentally, we also have an episode out on the channel, Internet Radio, podcasts and more podcasts. We recommend that one. Listen to it. Talks about the founder of, one of the founders of Internet Radio. The late, great Jerry Pippin was our broadcast partner. He's the man, actually, that coined the term iPod. Not iPod, but he used iPod, and that turned into podcast. He called them iPod shows. So he used that term, pioneered the term. Now that was in the 90s. Journalists, I believe, came out with the term podcast in 2005, long after Jerry had started his efforts. And at that time, it was a radio station, and they had MP3s on a site that were called iPod.